I told Snoop, I said, nigga, we got an issue.
Issues with Jay-Z?
Yeah, yeah. And the cool part about it, we was all cool. You know what I'm saying?
Do you know that Jayo Felony and Snoop Dogg were once as close as family? But the moment Snoop Dogg decided to cut off that relationship, everything flipped upside down. Jayo Felony went from a trusted hitmaker to a living nightmare. Nobody saw coming. The crowd cheered. Hollywood competed. Jayo Felony was expected to explode like a second ice cube. But Jayo Felony suddenly vanished.
Up now, he's on the ground and shit. So my whole mind was like, just get Snoop.
The reason was anything but simple. From rumors that he once threatened to take out Snoop Dogg to forcing Jay-Z to apologize to being blackballed by the industry because he told too much truth. And hip-hop has never been kind to those who refuse to stay silent. What really happened behind that clash? Who walked away the winner and who became the loser? Don't look away. The secret at the end will shock you. It's time to pull back the curtain. Born to fight the system. Jayo Felony, real name: B. James Savage. Born on December 31st, 1969, is a rapper who came out of San Diego, California, where the line between everyday life and gang culture is as thin as a thread. He was also known by several other names, such as Pure Pressure One Shot, Kill Bullet Loco, or simply Uno. Before hip-hop appeared as a way out, Jayo Felony was deeply involved with the Rollin' 40s, a gang active in southwest San Diego, stretching from Cholas View to Mount Hope. Jayo's childhood left no room for pampering. There was no permission to be different. His teenage years were tied to violent street codes and decisions with very few options. Eventually, that road led him to prison, a familiar ending for many who started where he did. That time taught Jayo something no school ever could. Freedom is never free. But hitting rock bottom became the turning point. When he walked out from behind bars, Jayo Felony understood that if he returned to the old path the next time, there might be no way out. He chose music. Rap was no longer entertainment, but a way to save himself. However, at that time, he got caught up in a legal case and was on the run from the Y8 situation. His brother picked him up and took him to Virginia to lay low. He stayed there for 2 years, so he no longer had to worry about going back to prison, kind of like an honorable discharge. During those 2 years, he had a friend who studied at Norfolk State, a guy from Queens. He made a demo with about 2 songs, then brought it to the house of Jam Master Jay's mother in Hollis, Queens. Jayo Felony caught the attention of Jam Master Jay, one of the great icons of American rap. In 1994, he signed with Jay's label, and on May 30, 1995, he released his debut album, Take a Ride. The album reached the top 65 on the Billboard R&B chart with tracks like Shermstuck and Lock Is On His Own, officially taking his name out of the neighborhood and onto the national hip-hop map. The momentum continued. In 1997, Jayo Felony collaborated with Warren G on the song Young Fun. By 1998, his career entered a new chapter when he signed with Def Jam and released the album What You Gonna Do. The project featured many big names and reached number 46 on the Billboard 200, showing that Jayo Felony was no longer a fringe name. That same year, Jayo Felony stayed active. He collaborated with Snoop Dogg and MC8 on the track Getcha Girl Dog, paid tribute to NWA with a cover of 8 Ball, and appeared on Exhibit's album 40 Days and 40 Nights. In the years that followed, he worked non-stop collaborating with major artists and releasing the album Underground in 1999. Even though some projects were frozen due to label issues that did not stop him. He appeared on LL Cool J's album GOAT alongside Snoop and Exhibit, then joined Ice Cube's War and Peace Vol. 2 with the song The Gutter. And it was on that musical journey that Jayo Felony found a true kindred spirit in Snoop. At that time, their relationship went far beyond studio collaborations. Snoop once invited Jayo to work with his label, but Jayo had to decline because he was still contractually tied to Def Jam. Even so, they stayed close. Snoop had a house in Montclair. It was practically the group's regular hangout spot. They played basketball in the yard. They cooked, ate, laughed like real brothers. Some days they did not record a single rap, just spent time together. Music was secondary. Friendship was the center. And that's where it started. The clash with Snoop Dogg. From a term to fists. Everything started with a term. Not a punch, not a diss record, but a name. Crip Hop. Jayo came up with it, while working on a track with E40 for the project The Element of Surprise. At the time, both Jayo and Snoop Dogg were at E40's house. Jayo stood outside on the basketball court, his mind tight as a wire trying to come up with something hard enough to rap with E40. He had only one thought. Today had to hit hard. So Jayo freestyled a verse, something like, "We do this for life. Our name will ring like Motown's golden era. A head-on collision between me and E40. One shot is enough. Blood fills the shoes. Even if you do not want it, you still get it like a free refill. If you do not recognize us, you will pay." That was where it all began. Things escalated when Jayo saw Snoop and Tha East Sidaz on the cover of The Source with the headline Long Beach, where Crip Hop rules. The cover presented Snoop as if he were the one who created the term. To outsiders, it might have just been a headline. But to Jayo, it was erasure. No credit, no permission, not a single mention. Jayo was furious, not out of jealousy, but out of principle. He blurted out a line that would later be quoted many times. "Damn, so they gonna just take my shay shot." Jayo had waited for permission. Just one word, like MCA used to do, or Westside Connection always did. Just that respect. But nothing came. Jayo grew up on hip-hop rules. LL Cool J, Run DMC, Rakim, Ice Cube. There was no such thing as biting. That was law. If Snoop used something Jayo created, the least he could do was say it. If that had happened, there would have been no problem. Then more bad news came in. Jayo heard that Snoop and East Sidaz had named a song after that exact term. And the breaking point was when Jayo heard Snoop use a lyric from his song, "The Lock is on His Own." In Snoop's verse on Nate Dogg's track, "Never Leave Me Alone." People started texting Jayo, "Yo, isn't that yours?" Jayo thought to himself that honey works better than vinegar. He waited, but they still did not acknowledge what was his. So Jayo decided to go to the Baby Boy film set. They were shooting in the 40s area of Los Angeles. Jayo was not born there, but it was still their hood. Jayo walked straight into Snoop's trailer. At first, Snoop laughed and stayed friendly. But when Jayo said, "We have a problem. Let's go talk in the back," Snoop hesitated. He followed, then suddenly asked the crew where the next shooting location was, as if trying to slip away. Jayo snapped back immediately. "Hold up, you're just gonna leave without talking to me." Words were exchanged. Snoop's security from the 60s stood on both sides. Then they rushed Jayo. He thought he was getting jumped. But Jayo got back up. He grabbed Snoop and held him tight like a WWE move. Snoop did not fight back. Luckily, Big D, Snoop's main bodyguard, who already knew Jayo, stepped in. Big D said flat out, "Stop. This is a film set. Take it any further and everybody's going to jail." They were separated. But for Jayo, that day was like pouring gasoline on a fire. The next day, he brought a large group of his people back to the set. The media was already there, ready to catch the story. And in rap, no battle is more effective than a beef. Jayo fired back with the album Crip Hop in 2001, calling out the very thing he believed was his. In the end, Snoop was the one who chose to cool things down. He called Jayo and said they should meet to resolve it. They met at Comic-Con San Diego. The very next day, Jayo walked into the studio with Snoop and the crew. They collaborated again. And years later, when Jayo appeared at a Warren G show wearing Snoop's jacket, he said it was a sign of respect. Proof that even though things once got extremely tense, the bond between them never completely disappeared. The confrontation with Jay-Z. The storm with Snoop had not even cooled down yet when Jay-Z jumped into the game. On the song, Streets is Talking from Jay-Z's album, Jay-Z rapped, "Is he blood? Is he Crip? Is he this? Is he that?" Right away, Jayo felt Jay-Z was being disrespectful. For two reasons. First, Jay-Z was a rapper from Marcy Projects in New York, not from the Coast Crips in San Diego, so he had no place speaking on gang culture. Second, Jay-Z was trying to step into Jayo's world, or his lane. Things became even more complicated when Hard Knock Life came out, a song that elevated Jay-Z to global icon status. And from there, whispers began spreading backstage. There were rumors that Jayo was the one behind that beat. But if you look at the confirmed facts, that story has almost no footing. The beat for Hard Knock Life was produced by the 45 King, directly sampling from the musical Annie with a clear timeline and verified witnesses. There is no evidence showing that Jayo ever created or owned that beat in any technical form. But Jayo's issue was never about the beat. He never claimed he made Hard Knock Life. What Jayo objected to was the spirit and aesthetic of Crip-Hop, a style blending gang culture with hip-hop that Jayo believed he had developed since the early 1990s. In Jayo's view, Crip-Hop was not a label anyone could just slap onto their music. It was tied to the West Coast context, to rappers who actually lived within that system. And Jay-Z, according to Jayo, was not a founder or a representative of that style. What Jayo was demanding was not ownership of a song, but recognition. Recognition that the style did not appear out of nowhere. Of course, critics could argue that Jayo Felony was also profiting from the fascination with gang culture, but he was always upfront about where he came from. While many rappers played both sides, flashing gang colors one day and claiming neutrality the next, Jayo Felony never hid the fact that he was a real San Diego product. Even when he aimed for mainstream success with Def Jam, he held firmly to his blue identity, while others treated it like a fashion trend. In 2001, Jayo recorded the diss track Trued Up. The song first appeared on the compilation album Bulletproof Love Vol. 1, then was re-recorded as a remix for the album Crip-Hop. What stood out was that Trued Up was not released through Def Jam, but through Motown Records. That decision helped the song receive heavy radio play, spreading across multiple regions from Miami to other markets. The lyrics emphasized the idea of true up a declaration that Jayo was a real gang member, while Jay-Z was just a rapper talking about that world from the outside. Jayo pushed the tension even further by shooting the Trued Up video right in Marcy Projects in Brooklyn, where Jay-Z grew up. Gang attire colors and symbols were staged like a challenge that needed no explanation. The video was later rejected by BET, deepening the feeling of being controlled and silenced. Then, a dangerous rumor surfaced. Many people in the hip-hop community spread the word that Jayo had called and threatened Jay-Z over Hard Knock Life. This rumor lived on for years, almost becoming the default version of the story. But according to Jayo's direct account in a long interview in 2023, the reality was completely different. Jayo insisted that he did not call Jay-Z. Instead, Jay-Z was the one who reached out wanting to meet and talk through the controversy, clearly even suggesting a meeting at a party where Beyoncé would be present. There was no recording, no public confirmation from Jay-Z, only Jayo's account existing in the gray zone between truth and silence. Jayo did not rap just to tell stories. His music was the voice of the world he came from, reinforcing his ties to the Crips, while giving listeners an unfiltered look at street life. In the past, Jayo Felony had already shown TQ how crazy things could get. When respect becomes the reason to walk away. TQ is an American R&B singer known for the hit West Side, which reached the top 40 in multiple countries in 1998. Going back to the summer of 2000, Dr. Dre's Up in Smoke tour was the hottest thing in hip-hop with a legendary lineup: Dr. Dre, Snoop Dogg, Ice Cube, Eminem, Nate Dogg, and many others. East Side as Snoop Dogg, Trey D, Goldie Locke, and Jayo Felony also joined the tour, while TQ appeared on a few R&B segments. On paper, it was a reasonable blend of rap and R&B. But backstage reality told a different story. The issue was not TQ as a person, it was the performance order. East Sidas were scheduled to open before an R&B singer. For many artists, that would have been just a technical detail. For Jayo and others from the street rap generation, it was a signal of disrespect. No one shouted publicly, no one grabbed the mic to diss on stage. But the tension was clearly there. Trey D later admitted that the sense of disrespect was real. Not because of ego, but because in the world they came from, position meant everything. Then rumors started to spread. People whispered that at one point Trey D and Goldie were ready to handle TQ. Some accounts claimed that Jayo nearly jumped into a fight. Jayo himself admitted that there was a moment when things came very close to violence. But in the end, what mattered was not a punch that never landed. What mattered was the decision that followed. Instead of swallowing it and continuing the biggest tour of the year, Trey D and Jayo chose to walk away. No dramatic statements, no tearful interviews. just stepping off the stage when they felt the line of respect had been crossed. Years later, that story is still told as a classic example of how Jayo Felony consistently chose honor over benefit. But it also gradually created an unavoidable image, an artist who was hard to bend, unwilling to play by the industry's softer rules. And that image stuck with him for a long time. By 2011, Jayo Felony was back in the headlines, but this time, not for music. A house in the Hollywood Hills, loud music, the smell of marijuana, drifting through the neighborhood, neighbors calling the police. The media quickly built a familiar narrative: a rapper in trouble, possibly a squatter occupying a foreclosed home. But Jayo did not stay silent and let others write his story. He stepped in front of the camera's voice, steady eyes cold. He said the house belonged to his friend's father. He shot back at the press, asking if they really thought he was stupid enough to break into a house. As Jayo drove away, the confusion shifted to the media. His girlfriend stayed behind, confirming they were not sneaking around. They had paid $5,000 in cash to rent the house from a man named Benjamin White. But legal records later showed that White had no right to rent it out. The Bank of New York, the true owner of the house, valued at more than $1.5 million, confirmed the property was in foreclosure. White had broken the lock, received eviction papers, then disappeared. These kinds of takeovers are not rare in Los Angeles, involving murky paperwork, fake names, and even bankruptcy filings to drag things out. In that story, Jayo was not proven to be a scammer, but he also refused the role of a victim. His attitude stayed the same: no apology for image, no bending for sympathy. Before fully leaving the scene, he left the cameras with one short line: "You should check your facts properly." Fox News. From the Up in Smoke tour to Hollywood Hills, the red thread never changed. For Jayo Felony, when respect was violated, he was willing to walk away, even if the cost was the spotlight, the system's support, or being seen as a troublemaker. And that is where the bigger question begins to form. In an industry run on compromise, is holding your line a sign of strength, or the very reason someone slowly disappears from the game? When resistance gets labeled as loss of control, Blackballed does not begin with a banned call. It does not need an official notice, and it certainly does not require a public prohibition. In the music world, especially at the higher levels of the system, things are far more subtle. They do not close the door in your face. They simply stop opening it. And that is exactly the feeling Jayo Felony says he experienced after his clashes with Snoop and Jay-Z. After the diss records, something strange began to happen. No noise, no announcements, no scandals exploding across headlines. Radio suddenly stopped playing Jayo's music like before. Interview invitations became fewer. The calls that once came regularly went quiet. The media did not attack him, but it no longer mentioned him either. For an artist at a stage where maintaining momentum mattered, that silence was even more frightening than criticism. In Jayo's own account, he believes he was isolated by Def Jam and the entire ecosystem surrounding that label. He does not say they kicked him out. He does not claim anyone directly banned him. What he describes is far more ambiguous. A feeling as if all the doors that once stood open suddenly closed at the same time, with no one stepping forward to take responsibility. There are no internal documents released to confirm this, no leaked emails, no meeting records, no senior Def Jam figure publicly admitting to applying pressure on radio or media. All that exists is Jayo Felony's account. And it is precisely this absence of evidence that makes the story harder to pin down, but also more thought-provoking. Because if you look closely, the system does not necessarily need a conspiracy to remove an artist. Sometimes it is simply a defensive reflex, an automatic mechanism. When an artist becomes difficult to manage, hard to predict, willing to openly criticize figures at the center of power, the system adjusts itself to minimize risk. No need to hate you, no need to target you. Just limiting your presence is enough. For Jayo, the issue was never about who he dissed. The rap game was born from confrontation. The problem was that he did not play by the unwritten rules. He did not choose safe opponents. He did not stop at music. He spoke directly about politics. He mentioned labels. He mentioned power. And most importantly, he refused to take his words back. In an industry where everything runs on relationships, balance, and image control, that kind of bluntness is easily seen as a threat. Not because it is wrong, but because it cannot be neatly framed. An artist can rebel within allowed limits. But when rebellion starts touching the structures behind the lights, it becomes something the system does not want to encourage. Jayo was not the first artist to fall into that gray zone, but his case was special in that he did not soften after realizing he was being pushed to the margins. He did not apologize to get back in. He did not change his tone to regain favor. Instead, he chose to keep speaking his way, even if it meant trading away mainstream opportunities. And it is right here that the idea of blackballed becomes complicated. If blackballing is a deliberate conspiracy, then there must be a mastermind. But in Jayo's story, there is no clear villain, no single name to point at, only a system operating on the logic of interests. That logic does not prioritize absolute truth. It prioritizes stability. From that perspective, Jayo was not punished for lying, but for telling too much truth. He was not pushed out for lacking talent, but for refusing to reshape himself to fit the mold. He was not crushed for being weak, but for refusing to stay in the position where the system felt safe with him. The coldness of this period did not come from losing money or fame overnight. It came from the feeling of being abandoned halfway. When you have gone far enough to see the big lights, but not been obedient enough to stand under them. When you know you have ability, but every road upward suddenly loses its signs. And it was in that silence that the image of Jayo Felony began to take a different shape. No longer a rising star, not exactly a failure either, but someone seen as hard to control, too sharp, too real to be a priority choice. A label never officially printed, but understood by everyone in the industry. The thing worth noting is that no one forced Jayo to be silent, but the system made speaking up expensive. And when the cost of truth becomes too high, very few are willing to pay it. Jayo paid it. Not through a loud collapse, but through a gradual withdrawal from the center, little by little, until only those who truly listened remained. So the question becomes this: was Jayo Felony truly blackballed? Or was he simply someone who refused to compromise in a game that demands softness? And if an artist is pushed out for being too real, does the problem lie with the artist, or with a system accustomed to opening doors only for those who know when to stay quiet? The answer perhaps lies somewhere between those two extremes. And it is precisely that blurred space that makes Jayo Felony's story memorable. Behind the scenes, Hollywood Hills, and a contested legacy. In 2011, the name Jayo Felony suddenly appeared in the headlines, but not because of a new album, a stage comeback, or a headline-grabbing collaboration. This time, the story unfolded in Hollywood Hills inside a luxury house where the line between property and territory became blurred, in a way very familiar to those who grew up on the streets. The media called it a squatting case. Cold headlines appeared emphasizing the image of a rapper who once had his moment now being found in a space that did not belong to him. But if you only look at it that way, you miss the most important part of the story. At that point, Jayo Felony was no longer on stage, no longer protected by lights or cheers. He appeared before the public as a stripped-down individual with survival instincts still intact after years of confrontation. His exchanges with the press did not carry the tone of explanation. They carried the energy of someone who felt cornered. The way Jayo spoke then was not much different from how he had confronted people in his rap. The same hard tone, the same distrust toward any system standing on the other side. What made the Hollywood Hills story notable was not legal right or wrong. It was the realization that Jayo had never truly left survival mode. To him, a house was not just property. It was a safe space, a place no one was allowed to enter without permission. That mindset formed early during years when everything could be taken away overnight. When the stage lights went out, that instinct remained, never disappearing with his career. The media at the time was not interested in the past. They did not ask why someone who once had a place in hip-hop ended up in that situation. They only needed an easy image, an easy label, a fallen rapper, a former symbol unable to keep up with the times. But Jayo Felony never tried to become a symbol just to lose it. He never played the game of building a perfect image. That left him without a cushion when everything collapsed. Seen more broadly, the Hollywood Hills incident felt like an unavoidable epilogue to an entire journey. A person who rose through raw truth, never learned to soften his words, never learned when to stay quiet. As hip-hop gradually became an industry, people like Jayo fell out of sync, not because they lacked talent, but because they refused to change their frame of reference. They kept speaking the language of the neighborhood, while the world shifted to the language of contracts and strategy. After 2011, Jayo Felony nearly disappeared from the mainstream flow. There was no staged comeback, no pre-written redemption arc. He appeared sporadically in interviews telling his story in a very Jayo way. No apologies, no glossing over, no effort to please the listener. To some, that was stubbornness. To others, it was one of the few remaining traces of a time when hip-hop had not yet been filtered through too many layers. Jayo Felony's legacy thus became hard to define. He was not a textbook legend taught in hip-hop history. He did not have decades of uninterrupted hits, but he became a clear case study of the cost of being too real in an environment increasingly favoring flexibility. That cost was not just a stalled career. It was the feeling of always having to defend yourself even when no one was actively attacking. Looking back, every piece fits together. From a street childhood to how Jayo reacted to Snoop Dogg when he felt his work had been taken, to how he confronted Jay-Z over perceived disrespect, to how he appeared in the Hollywood Hills story. Everything revolved around a single axis. Jayo refused to let others define him. And when someone refuses that, they often pay the price by standing alone. Some will say, Jayo pushed himself to the margins. Others will argue the system had no room for personalities like his. Perhaps both are true in different ways. Hip-hop has always talked about authenticity, but its history also shows that authenticity is most celebrated when it can be packaged, controlled, and sold. Those who refuse to be packaged often become side stories remembered more as warnings than as models. Jayo Felony's journey in the public eye ends not with an exclamation point, but with a question mark. He did not disappear completely, but he was never invited back to the center of the stage. His story forces listeners to think for themselves rather than being guided toward a safe conclusion. And perhaps that is the most fitting ending for someone like Jayo. If hip-hop truly celebrates authenticity, why are the most authentic ones
on
so
November
often pushed to the
16th,
margins
1999,
first?
Jayo
All data, analysis, and commentary in this video are presented based on information available at the time of production. The content is subject to change over time and should not be considered a definitive forecast. There is still so much more to explore: stories of resilience, legacy, and the truth. Feel free to dive into some of our top recommended videos now appearing on your screen.